Hello there, and welcome to Delightful Dissent. It's episode 70 today, and I am with Ems Rae Searle, who is an ethical marketing strategist. So, welcome to the show, Ems. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Hi.
It's great to have you on. And today we're going to be talking about the idea that you should do what you love. And I think this is a really well, this is there's so much people telling you today, like such it's all out there. Like I could just flick through my LinkedIn stream and it would be like there straight away. And I think it's kind of well-meaning advice, and on some level it's helpful, but it's nowhere near as straightforward as it sounds. And I think there are all sorts of some tricky pitfalls and things, and I'm not actually entirely sure what it means. So I think, I'm really looking forward to getting into this one and exploring this one today. Um, so yeah, if you happen to be new to the show, Delightful Dissent is a shared exploration of things, ideas that we kind of take for granted. And it came up through my work, working with people who are taking different and pioneering approaches to whatever they do. And Ems is absolutely one of those people. Um, and I found that when we do this stuff, there are often these kind of weird hidden barriers around the beliefs under the surface. And so it's about exploring those and challenging those. So I hope the show gives you some specific ideas that can help you in your professional life or your personal life. But perhaps more importantly, I hope it gives you some ideas about how you can go out there and challenge stuff for yourself, challenge some assumptions yourself. Because I'd like this to be something that everyone does and is a completely normal part of what everyone's up to. And the show is called Delightful Dissent because yeah, we are, we are kind of disagreeing a little bit with but maybe with the prevailing wisdom, but it's not about proving ourselves right at everyone else's expense. It's just about or making other people change their mind. It's really about kind of just exploring, having some fun, and yeah, looking at things from a different angle. And the show is genuinely live, so please do be aware there may be some difficult topics. Today, I think the most likely difficult topics are going to be around burnout and around prejudice and discrimination around neurodiversity. Um, and so also be warned that there is a possibility that there may be strong language. So if either of those are a problem for you, then please know that's a possibility. There aren't any perfect answers here. It's all about exploring and asking questions. That's what we're going to be doing. But if you are watching live, then please do feel free to ask your questions in the comments and to share those with us. If you are listening to or watching the recording, then we'll be sharing information about how you can get in touch with either of us at the end of the show and continue that conversation. So yeah, so, Ems, I think we were introduced by Sam Curtis, weren't we? Who was Sam was a guest on the show back in episode 65, and we had to chat. And I just really loved, particularly how you could kind of explain and talk about the more subtle connections between things, because I think that's they're often overlooked, and it's something that matters to me as well. So I'm really pleased that you could join us on the show. But could you maybe describe your work a little bit, who you are, introduce yourself a bit, please?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Ems Rae Searle, as Matthew's already said. I'm an ethical marketing strategist. A big part of my job is getting on ye old soapbox and shaking my fist at the sky because there are so many icky, manipulative, just kind of gross feeling marketing tactics out there being peddled. A lot of things that I personally don't agree with. When I first started my business, I just wanted to start a little marketing agency, little social media agency. And you pick up on courses and you watch a lot of YouTube videos because pedaling through as an entrepreneur and starting something new is a huge learning curve, right? And I found that, I don't know, approximately 60% of the stuff that was being taught, I felt really uncomfortable doing. And I was like, well, if I feel uncomfortable doing it, and I'm a pretty confident person, Lord knows everyone else is going to struggle. So I started unpicking what it is to feel comfortable marketing. And for me, especially as a neurodivergent person, there was a lot of tactics out there that seem really sort of pushy and manipulative that I wanted to avoid. So I built my own system on how to market your business without any of that kind of stuff. So I teach that system to entrepreneurs. It's all very up in the air and woo-woo, and it varies from business to business, as everything does anyway. So
I think that's a really important, like, that idea of there being a recipe for this stuff is whenever anyone's got like it's like that makes me worried.
yeah,
That's
right.
just not, particularly for something as like every business is different, right? And like, so
Mhm.
how you're going to find people and sell is going to be slightly
Yeah,
different,
it's
and you're going to do
actually a
differently.
there's a movement called the ethical move, and it's got a list of things that you should probably avoid doing if you want to market your business ethically. And I think the very last one is like the secret sauce approach, where you're like, I'm the only one who could teach you this thing, and it's this recipe, and you have to go from A to B to get to where I did. It's like, but it's a different person with different lifestyle, different needs, different business, different clients. How are you telling me that the exact same 5 steps are going to get them to where they want to be every single time? I don't think so. That sounds fake.
Well, it's either going to be fake or it's going to take you to a place you don't want to be. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
one or the
right.
other. So if it works, it's going to take you, the effect. If it's effective, the effect is going to be it's going to take you to the wrong place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, no, I think it's really, and I found similarly, it's actually quite hard to find good guidance on this stuff online because there is so much that's all about, it's very coercive, very much about control, and kind of almost feels
Mhm.
like tricking people into working with you. And that's just not how I want to start a relationship with someone when I'm working with them.
Exactly. And I feel like that's what marketing is, where it came from, is trying to manipulate a sale, right? That's quite
Mm.
literally the whole point of marketing. And the last 5 years, I think we've come a really long way in being like more purposeful marketing. And we've got just a little step further to go. Just a little bit more. But I mean, 50 years ago, it was yikes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, good grief. Anyway, yes, I don't think it's just there's so much there that yeah, not going to
Yeah.
tangent too far into that one. But I think it's such an, and I think it's such a challenge for those of us who do end up working on our own, particularly as neurodivergent people. And like for me, I have a very typically autistic strong sense of justice and fairness,
Mhm.
and I really can't like work in ways where that isn't met. And so the idea of kind of tricking people into it, there's no way, even if I thought it were a useful thing for the business in a sense, and I don't, it wouldn't be something I could do anyway.
Yeah.
And
There's
so,
that sense of like
yeah.
not wanting to lie and not wanting to trick, and that the whole justice thing, that's where the soapbox comes from. Like I just can't hop off it. I'm
Mm,
always on the soapbox.
yeah, completely. And I think the idea of how do you get what you do out there without having to force people, because it's almost like the message is you have to force people to do it.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah. So, have you got a quote that you wanted to share with us before we get into this really, really big assumption around, yeah, do what you love?
Yes, I have. And see, this was a difficult one because I was looking for quotes, and all of the quotes are, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I don't like that. So we're not going with that. Um, throwing that one out the window. So I found a quote by Arnold J. Toynbee, who is a philosopher of history, apparently. I did Google him to make sure he was not a bad person. Uh, and the quote is, "The supreme accomplishment is to blur the line between work and play," which I really liked.
Mm. So, what is it that really stood out for you about that particular quote? This is all of the others you could have chosen, given how many there are about this topic.
Well, there were a lot that were the same exact quote attributed to like 4 different people. So I was like, yeah, I'm not, definitely not going to go for one of those. For me, it's less about the idea that, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I feel like that can be really misguided. For me, as someone who takes things so unbelievably literally, if I were to do what I loved, every day for work and rely on it as a source of income because I have no choice but to live in this sort of capitalistic society, I would grow to resent it on days where it wasn't going my way. And I don't want to grow to resent the things that I truly love. So I like to try and find a balance. And what I liked was that this quote is, for me anyway, it's about finding that balance, blurring the line between work and play, so that it's not all play makes it not feel like work, which is what I feel like I was getting from the other quotes. It's more, how can we find a nice balance so that you get to do the work and the play and not end up hating it 2 years down the line?
And I think there's a really interesting, it speaks to a quite a, the word love in that is like, it feels a little bit like actually you have a relationship with your work, right? And love is not infatuation. It's not that, like, the fact that it's actually, you do have to spend some effort sometimes in any loving relation and with your work as well. I think that idea of like love not involving some degree of effort, it's not forcing it, but it's it's a strange idea that it becomes kind of effortless, I think. And I think it also feels like I like in the quote, that the quote you shared doesn't set up that idea that if you're not always having fun, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's a really common sort of pitfall to fall into, is especially if you think as literally as we do with our sort of neurodivergent brains, is if you don't love it 100% of the time, then there's got to be something wrong with it, or maybe you're doing it wrong. And
Or wrong with
that's
you, I think, is often the message I would internalize, actually. Like,
yeah,
it's why
absolutely.
don't I, and then yeah, for me, one of the neurodivergent experiences is I just like different things. I enjoy things
Mhm.
that other people don't, and I don't enjoy things other people do very often. And so, but there's so much social pressure around enjoying certain things, and that idea of like, oh, what do I? There's something wrong with me for not liking this.
Yeah,
That's actually
absolutely.
quite a difficult thing to, and having that in a work, bringing that into a work context as well. Yeah.
Anything that makes you feel unworthy of, I don't know, whether it's basic happiness, surely that's not a healthy mindset or question or relationship or whatever it is. If it makes you question whether or not you deserve to feel comfortable, safe, happy, all that jazz, surely it's not worth it. And it's like challenging those thoughts and those beliefs, I think, especially is important,
Mm.
because it's so easy, especially in a world where we're on social media and we have hundreds of people every single day telling us what we should feel and what we should think, what we should do, what we should buy, what we should or shouldn't eat. It's really easy to fall into the trap of, well, this is how I should behave. And if I don't, or if I don't enjoy doing it this way, then obviously there's something wrong with me. And then you end up just feeling a bit shit about yourself, and it spirals and it goes out of control, and it goes from this tiny little thing and it just kind of gets legs, and it just sort of grows out and latches onto everything and becomes this thing that you're going to have to spend a long time working through. I've had lots of issues. I've only recently realized that I'm autistic. I got diagnosed with ADHD coming up on 3 years ago now. And getting that ADHD diagnosis was like, okay, cool. So I know that this is a big part of who I am. And I started unmasking and learning how to live with it and being a bit gentler with myself and a bit kinder. And then all of the autistic traits just fell out. And I was like, oh, shit.
I had exactly the same thing. It was like the
Yeah.
autism's hiding behind the ADHD.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they battle each other. So externally, for a long time, it doesn't look like you've got anything, because there's the need for routine and then the need for spontaneity are like fighting it out internally. And then when you deal with one, the other one's just like, hello.
Yeah.
So it's a really common experience I think a lot of us have gone through. And before I had all of that like experience, before I went through any of that, I've been working for, it'll be 10 years this year now. I got a full-time job at 17. I left college early. So I've got a decade in in work. The last 3 years I've been in business for myself. It's the happiest and most content I've ever been, because I don't have someone else telling me, oh, you should just get over it. I don't care if you find answering phones uncomfortable, that you're going to be answering phones. I don't care if you feel this way about this, or me trying to have a serious conversation and then having a meltdown and then being called dramatic or oversensitive, all of those things. It's so difficult for me personally to be in a workplace with neurotypical people. I've found since starting my own business, everyone I've surrounded myself with, pretty much the vast majority, if not everyone, is neurodivergent as well. It's just a sort of weird little community I've built for myself.
Yeah, and I'm similarly, really, I think it's what was strange about my previous working life was actually I realized I'd kind of attracted some of that just through, the team I had. I think, significant neurodiversity and diversity in general, actually, by the standards of the organization, just um, because we were a bit different, and it was an okay place to be a bit different, unlike some of the other teams. And I think that's yeah, there's something really, and I think actually for me it relates to this marketing thing of like you need to do it this way, like and so many people being like, you know, I will tell you how to do this thing, and that is the only way that you will be successful or meet your needs. And I really feel like a whole load of this has been exploring different ways to meet outcomes that worked for me instead. And the example
Yeah.
I've given on this show actually often, and people are like, oh, you should take lots of clips and put it up and send it on all the social media and stuff. It's like I experimented with that. It took me hours. It was really horrible. I did not enjoy it, like editing out clips and then fiddling around with little video files and then uploading them and then copying. It was no fun at all. And it took me and it got me about half again as many views on an individual episode. What I found out was I could just do another episode with the same amount of time and effort that would get me more views both on that episode and on the other episodes, because people watch one and then go, oh, I like this, and then watch the other one. So it was like, so this idea of like there's a fixed way of doing it, I think
Yeah.
is one of the things relating to this idea of do what you love is like, yeah, but how? Because a lot of it is in the how. And I think that's a really important part of it. And I love that the quote brought in the play element,
Yeah.
because I
Play is
think
so important. It's the only way I can make my brain behave itself, honestly. Like, I have had so many friends of mine, shout out to Jennifer Jones, you're amazing. Every time I get in a funk and I'm like, I can't think of a name for the thing that I'm creating. Jennifer's amazing with words, right? She's like, right, get some crayons, sit on the floor, play with it. And it always comes to you. The second you lower your guard and stop making it like, I must sit at my desk and do things properly because I'm in work mode. I work for myself. Who cares if I'm sat on the floor in my pajamas with some crayons? As long as I'm getting shit done, that's the aim of the game, really. And I think for me, something again that I've noticed recently is really cannot stand being told what to do. And I think that might be PDA, the demand avoidance.
I think there's I mean, I think we can learn. I I have kind of internalized demand avoidance. So I'm like, if I think I should be doing it, I tend to ignore it. And like, yeah, no, no, ignore them. They're full of they're full of it.
Yeah.
It's that thing. It's also why I can't work with arbitrary deadlines. I think it's related, and maybe there is for me. I really anything arbitrary doesn't stick. It has to be concrete. It has to be tied to something concrete. And it can be like, okay, well, there's this, and you can work backwards from something. As long as there's a series of steps, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But I think partly it's also because, like with the demands, I've learned quite often that those are just wrong or unhelpful. And it's like, it's a little bit like the learning not to ask for help, which is also it's like I'm good at doing things in my own way. I'm really able in certain ways, but relatively not so able in other ways. If someone suggests a way of doing things, an outcome, a way of meeting an outcome that works for them or is the best practice, which we've done on the show already. It's like, yeah. But if someone, it's like if someone's insisting I do it a certain way, I have both a learned aversion to that and a real reason to think that's probably not going to work. And I think
Yeah.
it's figuring out which one of those is the case sometimes with when it comes up is like, but I think it's always worth asking the question, and it is this like thing of, is it the thing itself, or is it the way that I'm approaching it?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like with the sort of blurring the line between work and play, that is it. I love the quote, bringing in the play. However, I'm going to flip it on its head a little bit. When it's something that really irritates me, so hold on to your hat. When you start a new hobby, you start creating something, and people go, "Oh, that's cool. You should sell those." Fuck off. Absolutely not. I don't want to. I got into candle making a couple of years ago, right? I love candle making. It's very soothing. It's very calming. I get to play with hot wax. Who doesn't love playing with hot wax? Glitter, nice smelling things, essential oils. I shove some herbs on it, witchy candles. It's great. Have a great time. And then I take a picture of it because I'm really pleased with what I've done, and I put it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever platform I happen to be sharing things on. Someone goes, "Oh, can I buy one?" No, you can't, because the second I have to make it for money, I no longer enjoy the process. So I feel like you can bring, and that's why I like the sort of blur the line, or if I were to change this quote, I would change blur the line to finding the balance between work and play, because too much work, boring. Too much play, I'm then going to find it boring.
Yeah, it's really important. I think absolutely, and I think there's part of it for me that's like, there's so many threads in that I want to follow, but and one of them, there's so many kind of folklore traditions where you can't accept, where it's not a good thing to accept payment for
Mm-hmm.
certainly for anything in this kind of magical practice
Mm-hmm.
space. And I feel like that's that's actually a really big area that we kind of overlook, um, because it does change what you do. And there are some things where that works, and where I think it's also where you enjoy the stuff around it, where that doesn't feel like a burden, where
Mm-hmm.
it supports the play.
Yeah.
Because for
The
me, actually,
second it's something that you rely on, it's game over.
because I like to be able to, that one of the things I like about doing talks is that I get to research something. I get to go on
Mm-hmm.
a bit of a rabbit hole, which I kind of would do anyway, but it kind of gives me some positive constraints in that. Whereas I think for other things, for more creative, exploratory things, there's no way I'd want to be involved in. It's just a different form of creativity. It's not uncreative to write or do a talk. It's just different different kinds. And I've always cooked for years and years, and the thought of doing that for a living, I mean, no, never. That's not what it's for. It's for a different thing for me. And like throughout my life, I've had people suggest you should do this professionally. You should start but no, no.
Yeah, not everything needs to be monetized. I feel like I need to get a big red rubber stamp that says not everything needs to be monetized, and just start stamping people with it. Because I'm fed up of people telling me, "Well, you should sell those." Well, have you thought about making a business around that? I chose marketing for a very, very specific reason, because marketing and advertising has been I would say, sort of minor compared to my other special interest of mine since I was a teenager. I love the way it works. I love social media. I love advertising, but it's a job. It's not something that I like. I enjoy doing it to a certain extent, but I enjoy the strategy of it, right? So I picked it because it's something that I can focus on, that is work. It's in its own little box. And I know that marketing is so broad that I can focus on different things as and when my attention is pulled to it. I'm not doing one specific thing, the same steps over and over every day for years, because that would drive me absolutely bonkers. And not everything needs to be monetized. Sometimes I just want to create something to help people and put it out there. Business is difficult enough as it is without adding in all of these extra confusing things to it. I think finding something that I want to get rid of the word love. Just find something that you like and that you can explore and have fun with, and then make that your job. Do that, and then keep your creativity and like other things to yourself if that's what you want to do, and stop suggesting that everyone monetizes everything, because some people just really don't want to.
And you're right, it gets in the way of the enjoyment and the value of the thing. And I also think, for me, there's one of the things, and this is probably related to being ADHD, is I'm really interested in a lot of different topics that aren't apparently related. And there are aspects of them that I can bring in without bringing the whole thing in. Like the ideas, the practices, they can be applied in different spaces, but they don't have to be like, this is the thing. And I think that is another part of this, is like you don't have to come up with this. And maybe I do wonder whether this is partly a neurodivergent thing. I'm interested in things that aren't usually categorized together. I think people don't see how these things relate. And there's a lot of effort involved in explaining that to people, making that coherent.
Making those connections.
And so if we have to bring in every single thing that we love doing and make it coherent before we can take it out into the world and share it with anyone, I mean, then we're never going to do it. And plus for me, I'm always finding new things and exploring new things and being like, oh, I can take that bit and that bit. But like, if I have to know how to bring that in, how to monetize it, how to align it with all the other stuff that I do, I'm never going to do it. And I think there's a real
complicated.
So like you said, I think that idea of, this is why I think the playfulness is so much more important than the idea of like finding something you already love because otherwise it feels impossible.
Yeah, there are some days I absolutely do not love marketing. There are some days I'm like, why, out of all of the things, did I pick this for, me to base my business off of, and my income, and everything that I talk about online is in some way related to marketing. So it's a big part of my brand now. For me, I would say that I do love marketing. I love how it changes every 3 seconds. And that's something that really frustrates a lot of people. Like the algorithm, every 6 months, they're like, oh, by the way, we're prioritizing a new thing. Good luck. Like, it's very frustrating to business owners, creators, all that jazz. It keeps me on my toes. I always have to learn new things. If Instagram hadn't changed in the last 3 years, I would be bored out of my mind. And I get to focus on different platforms and do multiple different things all at the same time. I'm actually working with a client at the moment who's in person up here in Scotland, and we are doing some print. I haven't done print marketing in ages. And it's great because it satisfies my need for variety and for sort of spontaneity, is having to learn about different things, because I can already know all of the things about Instagram or Facebook ads or print marketing or whatever it is. And then I go away and I'll go work with another client for 6 months, and then I'll come back and everything's changed. So you're constantly learning. And I think that novelty aspect of it is what I find really helpful. So yeah, blurring the line between work and play, but also finding something that matches your learning style or especially if you're neurodivergent, if you have a specific way that your brain works and you struggle to hold attention on a certain thing, figure out the root cause of that and stop working against it. Build your business around that. Is there a way that you can pivot to do something else that you're being more pulled towards at the moment? Being a business owner, there are already enough tasks that we all have to do for ourselves that we really do not like, because you're not just a content creator and providing the service that you provide or the product that you provide. You're also doing all of the marketing. You're also doing all of the numbers, all of the sales, all of the boring admin stuff behind the scenes. Like, that's already difficult enough as it is. Let's stop making it even more difficult for ourselves by forcing ourselves to run our business in a way that our brain can't run it, and then we put all of this blame on ourselves, like, oh well, everyone else can do it, why can't I do it this way? Like, this worked for so and so, I don't understand why it's not working for me. And then we beat ourselves up, and then we get burnt out, and then we're 6 months behind again. So
yeah, completely. I think that there's something for me around that. Yeah, that needing to do it a certain way again, and I think that, and maybe, in this do what you love thing, it makes me think, what is it that I really enjoy and is playful for me that isn't changed, isn't pulled away from something that is playful for me by doing it for a living, versus what is, what are the aspects of it that I enjoy? Are they compatible with doing this for money or not? Because sometimes they will be and sometimes they won't be. And I think it's finding, it's finding something, that you love, but also that isn't ruined by having to do that for a living. And I think there's also something around this, like the other stuff we are, even if it might not look like it from the outside, I think our interests are very, very often quite coherent, and they do make sense. They just make sense on our own neurodivergent level, and they're more closely related than other people give them credit for. They join up underneath. And so I bet, actually some of the stuff you've done with candles that you've learned on some level has been really, really helpful with marketing, particularly when you start talking about doing things in the physical world again, and like, how does that work? There's going to be stuff you pulled from different areas. So it's not like it doesn't help. It's just, it doesn't directly result in getting paid. And then that's a different thing.
That's part of the process, right? Making candles itself, does it really relate to marketing? Not really. It's more a meditative, mind-numbing activity. You just whack a bunch of stuff. Does it smell good? Cool. I'm going to pour it into this jar and hope for the best. And like, it's an exercise in patience. But a big part of my process is, so I use mica powders and glitters to make them look really pretty. So like, it solidifies and it's just a white plain candle with some herbs on top, and I've like got a little label on it that says, this is for this reason, like if you want success in your business, burn this candle, blah blah blah. And I make them for my friends and family, and I won't sell them because I'm like, I'm gonna die on this hill, right? But the second you burn it, it shimmers and it turns gold and glittery, and it looks right, like it's like this magical thing that I really enjoy that. So when I'm making them, I like to show that off, and I tend to film it and share it on social media. And it adds sort of a human element to my own socials for work, but also I get to play with different filming styles that I normally wouldn't, because I'm my business, right? My brain and my knowledge and my abnormally large and never shuts up mouth is my business. So every time I film something for work, it's with a camera pointing directly at my face. I never get to do behind the scene point of view type videos. And actually one of my special interests as a teenager, when I studied media, my friends and I were constantly creating videos together, videography. So it links together in a way that you wouldn't expect it to at all. And I'm constantly honing in my skills in different areas by doing my hobbies and not making the actual product of the hobby itself the thing that I'm monetizing. The whole time that gets to just be fun and playful. I get to hone in my skills in another way that's actually beneficial to my business. You can't really make a good amount of money selling candles, honestly. Like, a candle sells for a finite amount of money. I'm not going to be able to sell it for much more. So for me, it's just not worth it. But the time that I take to de-stress and breathe and work on something new and play and shove glitter in things and see whether or not that color looks good with glitter in it, and do these scents make sense together? Probably not, but I'm putting them in for like magical reasons. Sometimes they smell like an absolute clusterfuck, but that's not the point. I get to have fun and do something different that takes my mind off of work. Ironically, that's where all of the best content ideas for my business come out. And it's because I've made the choice not to monetize something that I love, and I'm keeping it in its box. This is something I create for friends and family that I love doing.
Yeah. I think that, it's such a, there is so much pressure to it, particularly with all the, like online selling platforms, and there's pressure that comes with this of like, yeah, it's like, great. Well, and also like, how much does it detract from the bits that you enjoy? Because if you started selling them, you'd have to ship them, and then you'd have to deal with like shipping and
You have to do all the logistical
all of
stuff.
the logistical stuff, like,
It
and
makes it
then
stressful.
it would be no fun, it's like, and that would be stuff that takes you away from doing the marketing stuff. And so it's like, it's a really, yeah, I think it's a really, it feels like that idea of all of these relationships actually as a way of working with it, rather than just that and also just like, I think the other thing about do what you love is also is like one thing.
Yeah, right?
That's one of the other problems. Is like, great, one thing, really? I'm not, and it's weird. So one of the things that really interesting things that's related to this and having some kind of creativity and how it shows up in unexpected ways is
Mhm.
the single factor that predicts someone getting a Nobel Prize in science, more than any other, aside from them being white men for historical reasons, is um, that having a really quite advanced practice of music.
Oh, really?
And none of them are professional musicians, but like so many Nobel Prize winners are also, just as a hobby, musicians.
Hmm.
And there's something about, just, the practice of, and more so than their colleagues by almost any other measure as well, like, about doing something creative and something really joyful that helps you think and process and figure stuff out in a different way. And I don't, like you were talking about getting down on the floor and doing stuff with crayons, is that we don't give ourselves credit for the processing, the how we're thinking about how we're coming up with these ideas from a different perspective and then applying them. And that some of this is that, and that's, I think that's why it's rewarding almost. It's really, you said that, you need the play and you need the work. It's like, we they actually make each other interesting.
For me, I mean, they make each other work. Without the play, I would be so out of my mind bored that I would get zero dopamine and I wouldn't be able to actually get anything done.
Mm.
But also, without the structure of the work side of things, I would never make any bloody money. So they do walk hand in hand, and I think bringing play in, it's something that I recommend a lot to my clients. Actually, we do a lot of sort of mindfulness stuff and trying to get to the root of their issues. More often than not, it's rooted in sort of confidence problems, not wanting to show up online, and working through all of that, but also we bring in a ton of play. Like, how can we make this fun? How can we make this different? If you tried to sit down and film this video for work and it just didn't feel good to you, let's do it in a different way. Why don't you go somewhere more fun and film it elsewhere? You don't have to film everything sat at your desk. You don't. You can film it at the end of the garden. You can go on a walk with your dog if that's something that relaxes you. And then you can get some great behind the scenes, more fun, playful content while you're out just living your life. I always say to people, try to document more than you create, because you are your business, right? And people need to get to know you and who you are, and they can't get to know you if you are fabricating every single thing that you are putting out there. So instead of trying to come up with new ideas all the time, just have fun with what you're already doing in your life. Make room for more fun and just document it.
And it feels like also there's an element of inviting other people to play with that, inviting other people to that. And it's fun. One of the things I realized actually with doing this stuff is a lot of the people that, we tend to work with people who are quite a lot like us, really. And part of the reason people engage with the stuff I'm putting out is because you can see it improving, and then you can learn from that yourself. And I realize that looking at other people's stuff is like a part of the reason there's something in that, like partly the permission, I think, seeing other people doing that, partly the just the seeing how someone's changed and engaged with stuff over time. Because I feel like there's a bit of me that's like feels really cringy about stuff from a while back, and like I've recently gone back through the early episodes of this show, and it's like, wow, that was like, it was quite difficult, but having to remind myself of like, it was fun when I did it. Everyone was kind of engaged, and that was enough, and it kind of, it actually makes the stuff now somehow more valuable in a weird way.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think there's definitely something there around that, also with the do what you love, there's a feeling of like you have to be really good at something to be able to monetize it.
Yeah, I think there is so much power in messy, imperfect action. I am so sick of seeing overly polished YouTube videos. I don't want to see that. I want to see you, and I want to see you mess up. And I respect someone more if they cough or sneeze or stumble over their words and they leave it in a video, because I'm not going to sit and listen to myself talk and go back through and snip out everything that's not absolutely perfect that I say. I think that we censor ourselves too much. We put too much pressure on ourselves. It's not conducive to actually getting stuff that we enjoy done in a way that feels really good to us. So for me, I would say biggest bit of advice, and this is advice that I myself need to follow, because I do have a podcast. I haven't told you about it because I haven't done an episode in like 2.5 years, because I did the first 10 and went, cool, I'm going to take a break. And then I went, oh God, do I hate it? Shall I never do another episode again? I want to do some more episodes. I've just really struggled with how. And it was really messy and it was really imperfect. And I still get a lot of good feedback on those episodes. But there's that little brain goblin in there that tells me that, yeah, but it was a bit shit. And there was one episode that you filmed and it was almost 40 degrees outside. And you were like, oh my God, it's so hot. I'm so uncomfortable mid podcast. And you just left it in there. Like, so maybe you shouldn't be someone who has a podcast. Maybe people don't want to listen to that. But all of the feedback that I've had counteracts the brain goblin, because the feedback I've received goes, I can't believe how real you've been. And I really enjoyed you just having a chat and, you know, getting on your soapbox and shouting about something. I found it really entertaining. And it's nice to see someone who doesn't overly filter what they're putting out there. And it's like, I could take the mindset of, I released it in a sort of pretty lazy fashion. But equally, I did it in the way that it had to in order for me to consistently do an episode every week. And I did that for 10 weeks and I really enjoyed it. I need to make myself get back into it because the longer it goes, I mean, it's been 2.5 years now, the longer the further I go from like where I am now to let's start season 2, the more doubts creep in.
And then the more different it becomes. I think that's also the thing for me. It's like it'll be quite, and there is a limit between like, okay, this is now a different thing
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And it's like, and maybe that's the thing. It's like, oh, well, I did that one. And that's also, part of the playfulness is like to be finished with a thing, to say, okay, I've got what I needed out of this.
Yeah.
And I've often found that with like, particularly because, a very typically ADHD thing is once I've got to a decent level of like, once I've got my head around something,
Mm-hmm.
quite often I'm just, that's all I need out of it. And
Yeah.
it's not that I'm, and people are like, well, why don't you could be really good at this. You could kind of master this. It's like, I'm not actually interested in that. What I need out of it is something different. And I've got all of that now.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to kind of put something down. And I think that like trying stuff out to see if you really enjoy it, to see how it works, and to also
Mm-hmm.
be able to iterate and say, okay, well, there was this one and now I'm going to do it slightly differently because now I know differently. um but I think there's also something in there for me around like this idea of, if we're when we're always worrying about doing what we love, we always have to present this. It relates to the polishedness and the presenting a perfect picture and not being able to show difficulty. And I
It's
think
really
that's an
hard as well if you're one of those people like I said I am earlier, who takes everything so literally, to not go, well, clearly their life is perfect. It's just a highlight reel. They're only showing me what they want me to see. They probably had a breakdown 3 minutes ago. Like it's fine. We all are messy and imperfect. And I feel like we just need more permission to embrace that about ourselves and to just try things out. The amount of things I've put out in my business and gone, I'm going to try this out. And then I've done it and I've gone, fuck no, I am not doing that again. That was terrible. I didn't enjoy it. It was a great idea for someone else,
mm,
not
yeah,
for me.
yeah, completely.
Yeah. So it's giving yourself the permission, or getting someone else to give you the permission, because sometimes we don't trust ourselves, to just have fun with it and to be messy and to take imperfect action.
Mm. And I think part of that is if we're gonna do that, we have to be comfortable with the idea that we might, it might not work out,
You might
and
fall
and
flat on your face.
and that we don't have to present that, because I think in this do what you love, there's something really sneaky about like, therefore people only, you're only kind of valid or doing it right or approve if you're showing up as like, this is amazing all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and like never showing the difficulty, never showing the downside, never showing the, you know any kind of struggle really with any of it.
I feel like so many of us have gone into business to help people who are struggling in some like we want to make a difference. That's the biggest thing that holds, I would say, entrepreneurs together. Is we always hear like, you need to talk about your why, and more often than not it's trying to help someone make a difference to a community. You would make more of a difference if you were less polished and just putting out all of the perfect stuff. The amount of times I've put up a post where I've gone, right, okay, this is something I struggle with. This is something I've gone through, and it's given other people the strength and the confidence to go, me too. I've also gone through that. It was fucking horrible. Here's how I've dealt with it. And then they've put it out there, and then the ripple effect goes out to someone else and it helps someone else.
Mm.
You will have a much bigger impact the messier you are.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that there's also something in this, that's around where this work is about dealing very often with difficult things. So much of my, everyone I work with is is really helping resolve pain, suffering in some way, like
Mhm.
difficulty in some way. And so it's that means engaging with it, feeling it, like being in it. And that isn't an enjoyable experience in and of itself. It might result in something satisfying in the end, and we do it because it matters. But the idea that we should be like, "Way, this is amazing" all the time isn't appropriate when we're talking about someone who's, like someone who's a therapist, or like
Mhm.
is like, "Way, this is amazing. They're telling me about all these awful things that have happened." No, no. So
Yay, trauma.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. No, I completely get that. That we are in business to solve real issues. It would be really, what's the word? Irresponsible of me to show up on social media and act like I don't have confidence issues. Because a big part of what I help people solve is their issues with their confidence and showing up in a way that actually works for them, because they're trying
Mm,
to do it in the way that everyone else tells them that they should. And then obviously it doesn't work out because everyone has different needs. And they get upset with themselves, right? If I showed up and I was like, well, everything I do is great, I'm super confident, I show up perfectly all of the time, that would be really irresponsible of me, because they would get the wrong understanding and feel like I'm going to be pushing them into a corner and telling them what they have to do, what they should be doing again. So
mm.
full circle moment ties us right round to the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I was feeling into like sensing the same thing. It's cool. Yeah, completely. I think that, if we're too obsessed with the perfection and the tidiness
Mm-hmm.
and the is we're gonna be we set up a situation where we are implicitly telling people that.
Mm-hmm.
We're telling people our lives are, my life is perfect, and if you do this, then your life will be perfect too.
Mm-hmm. And that, I believe, is the blueprint to the fake online bullshit guru.
Yeah, yeah, it
That's the
is.
recipe. Pretend to be perfect, fake it till you make it. Does it work out in your favor? No. Is it going to be fulfilling? No. Does it work? No.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, it's like it works if you follow this very exact set of steps that turn out to be almost impossible to follow,
Mhm.
or, or
Well, they're
don't.
never going to work for everyone. Just like I said earlier, everyone has such specific individual needs. You can never have one recipe that's going to lead you to success. I remember when I first got into business, I was friends with this lady who had also just gotten into business. She wanted to set up an online course business at the beginning of COVID, when it was all the rage to, passive income, set up an online course business. So an online course business is a genuinely good idea, right? She bought a course from some gurus on how to have a successful online course business. The one bit of advice that they gave people was, the first thing you have to do is spend $1,000 on Facebook ads a month. And then you get your first sale for $2,000. And then you put that $2,000 into Facebook ads until you get 2 sales. And then you put that $4,000. And eventually you're a millionaire. What?
I mean, surely
Excuse me?
eventually I mean, until eventually you've just made Mark Zuckerberg even more money. I mean,
Yeah, right.
that like I but I think, yeah, these kind of hacks, tricks, and I think that, and the where there is an aspect in this, do what you love in the true sense, it's like you don't have to look for hacks. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to work at the thing, you
Yeah.
know, and to find some bits difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not a sign that immediately it's wrong
Yeah.
necessarily.
I
If you're
feel like
still
if you look
drawn
at
to
them,
it, there's something in it
mm,
for you, even if it's hard, and that is really important too. And if we're just like, oh, I don't think this is fantastic, this isn't the most fun thing I've ever done immediately,
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just like, okay, no, cheers, bye.
People who want immediate results, and that's their main driver, is the thing that they value the most is getting from A to B with as little effort as possible. Like the people who crave hacks and will watch YouTube videos that are like, the one thing you need to do to become a millionaire. Like those people ought not to be in business, because it's not easy and it takes years. And you can be an overnight success all you want, but what they're not showing you is the 3, 4, 5 years of them grinding and failing and falling flat on their face and trying again over and over and over and over and over again until something works. And that persistence is really important. If you're not willing to be persistent and you just want to get from A to B as quickly and as cheaply as humanly possible, all of the free webinars in the world are not going to save you, babe. Don't be an entrepreneur. Do something else.
Yeah, completely. The idea that it's, that we can just find a thing ready-made. And I mean, maybe this is true for some people. I suspect actually for quite a few people there is some truth in this. There is a pre-made path that there's a bot, that to a greater or lesser extent is going to work. But if we're unconventional, if we're neurodivergent, if we don't fit, the chances of that existing are kind of low. And actually, we're going to have to do the work of carving out our own space, figuring out what that is even. And some of that is hard and unpleasant and difficult. And I think that's if we assume that we just need to land in that thing and it's going to be great straight away, we're never going to be able to do that. But that's not to say it shouldn't be rewarding and interesting, and we should be looking for ways, playing with ways that make it feel good and work, and moving towards that. But I think for me, it's this idea of like, that you can just find that off the peg. It's just there. And you just need to find the next course that's going to tell you, or find the next person who's going to tell you exactly where that is. It's like, no, you're going to make this. That's what's actually the thing. And it's a trajectory thing rather than a thing that's just out there waiting for you to be like, oh, here it is. Oh, great.
Yeah. You're going to make mistakes. It happens. You're going to fall flat on your face. You've got to be okay with failure. You've got to be okay with putting in the time and putting in the work and trying things, and then trying it again another way, and then trying it on the floor with crayons, and then trying it stood up in another room with a whiteboard, because no one is going to have the cookie cutter step by step. This is exactly what you and your brain needs to get you from here to here. You're going to need to figure out, like, they can give you the basics, they can give you the pillars. It's up to you to, join them up and to figure out your own way of doing things.
And I think also to bring in bits from other places, if bits don't work, is take from the other things that you're interested in, the other things that bring it together. You can work towards something that does feel coherent and brings all these different aspects and understand this relationship. And both of us have done so much of this stuff already that we can be clear about how these things link up in their own weird way for us. And but it's okay if they don't immediately as well.
Yeah.
And maybe they never do, or maybe you're never quite consciously aware of how they do. As long as it works for you, I think that's the key thing. Yeah. So if people want to get in touch with you or kind of talk to you about anything, is there what kind of things do you like to, if people want to talk to you about this, or what kind of things would you like people to get in touch with you about, or questions or anything? We've got your LinkedIn in the show notes, so they can reach out and connect. But how would you like to talk to people?
Reach out with me, connect with me, whack me a message if you've got any questions, or if anything that I said you found it really helpful, or if you disagree with me. I love a good debate. Feel free to reach out to me. And if you want to have a chat, just one-on-one, and get to know me a little bit more, I welcome that with open arms. I notoriously do not like networking. There is one networking group I love, and I'm actually a host for that networking group. Every other networking group, I'm like, nah, keep it away from me. Don't want to. So I'm more of a let's have a one-to-one chat with a person, so I can actually get to know someone and start building a real relationship with a person. So if you fancy having a chat with me, pop me a message. I'll pop you my calendar, and we can get to know each other. But other than that, you can follow me on pretty much every social ever at Ems Rae Searle. But be warned that I follow my own advice. I don't have all of the platforms. Like, I have them, I just don't use all of them because no one has that much time. I use LinkedIn, I use Instagram. Don't try and follow me on Facebook. You're just not, you're going to get like Instagram's leftovers. It's not a fun time. So follow me on Instagram if you like seeing stories and behind the scenes content of my fish and my dogs. But otherwise, just message me on LinkedIn.
Fab. Thank you so much. That's yeah, that really, I think it's such an important thing to really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
And yeah, and thank you everyone in the audience as well. Thank you for watching, and it is your support that kind of makes it possible, or kind of, well, at least legitimizes my excuse to talk to interesting people about random stuff. So yeah, thank you for doing that. So please do get out there and share it, rate it, whatever you feel like that kind of helps other people find it. There are upcoming and past episodes available on both YouTube and LinkedIn. And also the podcast is available if you search for Delightful Dissent on your favorite podcast platform. The very exciting news is that I'm starting to work through the backlog, and we're starting to get some of the back episodes now on the podcast. So if you do find it, you'll find some stuff coming through, and it will take a little while to catch up fully, but those are starting to catch up now. So please do, yeah, check out the podcast as well. And the next episode, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Emma Langman, who is a change optician, coach, facilitator, and speaker. And we're going to be talking about the assumption that you should measure progress. And I feel like this is a really interesting one, because it does really relate again to what we've been talking about today, and the idea that you can know what's relevant to measure ahead of time, and when so much is amenable to measurement, like so much is amenable to monetization, that like that you, just because you can doesn't mean you have to. And I think that's a really so I'm really looking forward to that one. And so this is a slightly delayed episode, and so they're slightly out of order, but this one is actually this Friday at 1 p.m. UK time, which is the 21st of April. So I really very much hope to see you then, but in the meantime, please do go out there and make some delightful dissent of your own. Goodbye.